President Obama had a press conference today, and one of the main topics, and you heard most of it live here on the show in the first hour, most of the topics, or at least early on, centered around the NSA spy program, if you will, or intelligence program. Joining us now to talk about that and more is the chief analyst at LIGNET, Fred Fleitz, is with us. Hey, Fred, good to talk to you again.
Hey, Steve, good to be here.
Well, thank you. All right, you wrote a piece just the other day talking about the leaks. And I was just, I was, as a layman in all this, I was just dumbfounded by these leaks that told the world just exactly why we closed our embassies, how we found out about the threats, and culminating in the revelation of this conference call by al-Qaeda leaders. And we know now that the head of al-Qaeda, broke protocol and went back on cell phones. And I said, which was an obvious question, What? Why would we want to know this? Why would the administration ever want this out there? And you address all of this in your piece.
That's right, Steve. This was pure gold in terms of intelligence. A conference call among al-Qaeda leaders around the world. This should never have been released. This should have been tightly held. This should have been something that historians would have read about years from now. And we can be sure there'll be no more conference calls like this. This source has been burned. And based on this and a series of very sensitive leaks by this administration, I believe this is the most irresponsible administration ever on intelligence. If we look at the Zero Dark 30 movie, the compromise of the name of Dr. Shakil Afridi, he's the doctor who helped set up the raid on the bin Laden compound. The Stuxnet virus, the New York Times said Obama was pumping it up. There was a piece last year where Obama apparently was individually choosing targets for drone strikes to make him look tough. And then there was a second underwear bomber plot where we apparently were running a double agent. We had a double agent in there who had to be withdrawn apparently because this was blown. Intelligence like this doesn't grow on trees. It's not a limitless resource. It's not a political chit that a presidential administration can play to make themselves look better and conduct political games with the president. Once these things are gone, they're gone.
Okay, so the motivation, there are people being investigated supposedly to see where the leak came from. But my first thought, and I think you write about this in your piece, and is that, okay, this was done because now all of a sudden it's like, wow. And I heard reporters question members of the administration, or analysts question, questioned by reporters on CNN and others saying, well, I guess this shows that the NSA program is very valuable and is really working, right? So could this have been leaked, in your view, to, by the administration to show the world and Americans specifically that, hey, this NSA thing is good?
I'm afraid it looks that way, and it's such a shame because it was easy to defend these NSA programs without revealing this intelligence gem.
Okay, but now, interestingly, Fred, the president at his press conference today, as I mentioned at the beginning of this interview, did address this question of NSA. Actually said some interesting things. One, and we could talk about these individually. One, he said that before the Snowden thing ever happened, he was already, ready to or had launched an investigation or a panel and to look in to see how, they could make the NSA better and do away with abuses and make sure it wasn't intruding on American civilians. And, this is news to me. Maybe you knew about it. Number two, he also said that Snowden, that the president signed an executive order protecting intelligence whistleblowers, as he called them. Now, he did not say that Snowden was an intelligence whistleblower. He was asked by Chuck Todd if he classifies him as a whistleblower. He said he's not a patriot. He said he could come back and go to court and try to fight his case here that way. But he did say that Snowden could have realized that he, the president, signed an executive order that protects intelligence whistleblowers. So I didn't know about that one either.
Well, I heard a lot at the president's press conference, and it's news to me that the administration was going to do anything about the NSA programs. I don't think the NSA programs were illegal. I'm a defender of them. And I give the president credit. He said some very interesting things. He said, despite these allegations that are really dividing the country and creating a lot of anger on Capitol Hill, there's been no evidence that they've been abused. There's been no evidence that the government's listening to phone calls. There's no evidence that the government is reading emails. There's the concern about potential, and I think the president did the right thing in saying we have to reassure the American people if these programs are going to continue. And I mean, I'm a big critic of the president, but I think he did some things right now. Now, concerning the statement about whistleblowers, the president can issue a proclamation if he wants, but unfortunately there are legal limitations on how much protections can be granted to whistleblowers because of concerns about information being compromised. But I think this is something Congress is working on. I'm hoping that Congress will decide to designate the intelligence oversight committees as safe havens for intelligence officers, so they can bring information there without fear of retaliation, bring it confidentially, bring it to the attention of the intelligence committees. So people like Snowden, assuming he was a whistleblower, which I dispute, but people who have a real concern, they don't go to the media. They know that whatever concern they have will be investigated.
Yeah, we're talking to Fred Fleitz, chief analyst at LIGNET, who, by the way, as you probably know, served for 25 years in U.S. national security positions with the CIA and the State Department and the House Intelligence Committee staff. So when we look at this, and the president did, though, today, and he got some criticism from Peter King for this, I believe, did say that he's going to go ahead and he is going to try to streamline the NSA, and he is going to try to cut down. And even though he said it's not spying on Americans, and you're right in what you said, and he did defend the program, he did kind of add a big but to it, and saying that, you know, the way I interpret it was he was trying to gain favor with the extreme left of his party in remarks that he also made with regard to NSA today. Did you find that at all?
You know, I thought about that a lot, and at first I was thinking, you know, he's selling out the NSA, he's going along with his critics, but I don't think that now. I think he's sort of bowing to reality, as are the members of the intelligence committees. There's simply too much pressure on the government to let this program continue the way it is.
Okay.
And
yeah.
I actually give the president credit that he didn't sell it out. He did say there has to be changes, that there has to be more better oversight, release a little more of the American people. But generally, he supported it, which surprised me.
But overall, this president has compromised more national security. I mean, you know when it all started, Fred? And correct me if I'm wrong. When he took office and said that he's doing away with the CIA interrogation unit, and he talked about the tactics that we used. He made public every tactic that was used, blowing smoke in the face and sleep deprivation and this and that. I mean, giving all that information, it just seemed it just was surreal what I was listening to. And and it continues right through to Joe Biden saying that it was SEAL Team 6 that got bin Laden, and then of course SEAL Team 6 had an X on their backs, and they were hit 2 months later and lost all those fine men in that plane that went down. And right up until now, with the leaking of the conference call from Al Qaeda, it just seems like it's a disease with this administration.
It began as soon as the president came into office. That's exactly right. And releasing the memos on the CIA interrogation techniques, it hurt us internationally, it hurt our reputation. But even worse, terrorists now know how they're ready for these tactics.
Right.
I mean, the nice thing about them before is that terrorists didn't know what we would do, and these were not torture. They were tough interrogations. They weren't used very often, and they stopped terrorist attacks on our country. What I'm real concerned about, Steve, is so many of these leaks took place in 2012 when the president thought he was in political peril prior to the November election. I don't think it's a coincidence that they're all grouped in May, June, and July of 2012. I'm afraid he'll never be held accountable for this, but I hope historians one day look at this and say, what was going on here? Yeah,
and back to the NSA, here's one thing. I'm a defender of it, too, to a point, but what bothers me is if you're telling me that in a ticking bomb scenario, which, the left likes to say, oh, that could never happen, but in a ticking bomb scenario, you won't put a terrorist's head underwater to find out, to try to stop the next school, God forbid, or shopping center for being hit with a bomb, because that's not who we are, then I kind of feel like then you don't need to have the phone numbers that I, a non-terrorist, am calling. You know what I mean? I mean, if you want to be consistent, then do it right. But don't tell me you can't treat a terrorist like a terrorist to save American lives, but you're gonna have a list, even though you'll never use them, of calls, for instance, that I make. That's where I don't like. That's the inconsistency that I find hard to swallow.
I completely agree with that. And let's add to the fact the IRS scandal and the administration going after journalists. There's no trust for Washington from the American people right now. And I understand completely your listeners who are really worried about this NSA program and they want to shut it down. Why should they trust the government? What's going on? I've been in the government. I know the extreme restrictions on NSA people on abusing this stuff. I've been at the desks. I know a lot of the things Snowden has said is just false. But I understand these concerns. It's hard to trust the government right now.
Yeah. All right, Fred, pleasure talking to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Fred Fleitz, ladies and gentlemen, chief analyst at LIGNET here on the Steve Malzberg Show. And I'll say that over and over. I mean, as much as there is and here's what I don't get. As much as there is this bipartisan support for, even some on the left, for in Congress and elsewhere for the NSA, which again I don't have a problem with for the most part, but these same people on the left that will say say okay, we have to have the NSA, we're right up there, especially the elected officials that sit in the committees in the Senate and some in the House that just couldn't wait for Obama to get in as president the first time, so he could do away with the CIA interrogation unit and do away with these techniques and do away with waterboarding, because that's not who we are. We can't take a man who we know is a terrorist and stick his head underwater even if it'll save American lives, because that's not who we are. But we can monitor every phone number that Joe Blow and you and I call, and we're not going to do anything with it, but we have it just in case. Really? Is that who we are? See, that's what I don't like. I don't like the inconsistency.